Evening, Mayor. Thank you very much for your time and welcome to Full View. Simply put, according to that report, this senior person flat out lied to the city. How did this happen?
Good afternoon to you. Yes, that's very, very unfortunate. A CFO is in a position of trust, a very, very important person in an organization. And unfortunately, there was a dereliction of duty on his part. And we have to follow the processes outlined in the MFMA, the Municipal Finance Management Act, to attend to his actions.
So, Mayor, the amounts are simply eye-watering, and I'm just going to share very quickly some of these findings by the AG. The city reported payments outstanding to suppliers at just over 6 billion, when in fact it was more than 11 billion. There were loans to the value of 900 million rand that were simply left out of the report. And then this gem stated salaries and wages at 7.4 billion rand, but the amount on the draft budget was almost 12 billion rand, and the AG couldn't find the appropriate evidence for salaries and wages because the municipality was not able to provide it. How do you reconcile this? This is staggering.
Well, actually what happened, the AG mentioned those figures, and they also said, you mentioned the 6.4 billion, that they could not get the evidence about the reconciliation. So the amount is not 6.4 billion. There were reconciliations that needed to be done, and they weren't sure whether they had to lower that amount until they get the evidence. And that was precisely the problem that was experienced with the CFO. He had 5 appointments with the AG's offices, and he undertook to give evidence that he has to give for all the transactions that took place. Evidence is available. Unfortunately, he never collected it and he never delivered it.
But where was the oversight?
The oversight was there, but unfortunately, he kept on misrepresenting his actions.
Well, you know, surely oversight, one would imagine, and, you know, as a layperson asking, you know, you would share the books, you would do almost a parallel kind of reconciliation for the chief financial officer. There would be a group of people who would be privy to that information. Is that not how it happens? Well,
the person that's involved, that's leading the team, is the CFO. There's a process, an audit plan that the AG's office follows, where they eventually bring in, they brief the APC, that is the Audit Performance Committee. They then brief the city manager, and eventually, lastly, they then brief about the provisional outcome. They brief the mayor, but that's way at the end of the process. So that happens around end of November, December. The audit process normally starts in August already. So unfortunately, when a person who's in a position of trust misrepresents the information that's given to both the AG and to the executive, it is problematic.
So Mr. Banda is a slick liar, is what you're saying?
Well, misrepresentation is what it says, that you unfortunately not presenting a true state of affairs.
Which would be a lie, right?
Well, yes, yes.
So what criminal charges are you pursuing, and when is this likely to happen?
Well, we need to set out the report now that we will be bringing to council at the end of the month. We will follow all the duties that's bestowed on a CFO in terms of Municipal Finance Management Act. And where you unfortunately breach those duties, it can result in criminal charges being laid against you. So we're getting all the documentary evidence. We're preparing the report for council, because at the end of the day, that position of CFO is what we call a Section 56 position, which means council appoints and have to dismiss that person. So what the city manager has done, he terminated his contract, and now we need that decision to be ratified by council at the end of this month.
When that contract was terminated, did Mr. Banda leave with benefits? Did he, you know, did he kind of just have safe passage out of his job?
He was given a normal notice of 1 month that his contract was being terminated on the advice of the city's lawyers. Mr. Banda was not satisfied with that. He then took us to court. The case was then heard at the end of December or early January, and he lost the case.
It's interesting, Mayor Randall, that you say action will be taken, because this report also flagged a lack of appropriate action being taken against officials where there are proven events of financial misconduct. What makes this different?
The officials that you referred to is where it was flagged that there were officials that benefited from the supply chain management. Now, when you get reports that's delivered to the mayoral committee, that also comes to council, the only documents we have access to is that such and such a company was awarded a certain tender. We don't see who the shareholders of those companies are. So you need to do further research on every company to find out who are the shareholders, who are the directors. That information is not readily available for the executive. So it seems that the AG was able to do further research, and they found that there were officials and also, unfortunately, some councillors, but this is allegations. It's not based on total evidence. So these are allegations that they benefited from tenders, and now the city is undertaking investigations. For example, we're following the money, seeing whose bank accounts that money was paid, see who are the shareholders of those companies that received that money, and so forth. So we now have to get the evidence.
Mayor Randall, you know, as I'm listening to you speaking, you know, one would say it's a fairly easy thing to go onto, you know, Cipro, any of the you know, the websites that manage, you know, companies and their registration, and you'll be able to see, you know, quite clearly who the board of directors are, who the shareholders are. Or that, you know, given the greed and the corruption that is endemic in our municipalities, that this would almost be a new adopted process before tenders are given and money leaves the gate, which is very hard to find after the fact and which costs a lot of money to try and recoup after the fact. That this is something that could have been done quite effectively and wasn't.
Look, all tenders are granted in terms of tender specifications that state out what documents need to be submitted. Normally on Cipro, the company's organization, at the DTI, the shareholders are not listed. Yes, the directors are listed, but you don't find the shareholders listed at Cipro. So that's problematic, and we will then have to look at the specifications when people apply for tenders, what kind of documents should be demanded.
Allegations of fraud and extortion which exceeded 100,000 rand were not reported to the police as it's legally required according to the report. Whose responsibility is it to do this, and why wasn't it done?
Well, I'm not certain about which case they referred to, but when it comes to fraud and extortion, depending on in which department, the group head, what we call the head of that department, will then have to take it up with the city manager, and the city manager as accounting officer will then have to lay the charges.
You know, the final sort of responsibility, Mayor, obviously would lie at your door. And as we read this report, where we look at the flagging around, you know, the lack of proper internal controls, it seems as if there was an absolute free-for-all. Of course, this is happening under your watch. Even the MFMA, which is the Municipal Finance Management Act, not enough to insulate the city's coffers from thieves. How do you take personal responsibility for this, especially in a context where the AG is doubting the city's ability to even continue as a going concern?
Well, let me address the last issue. The issue of whether your going concern is defined as a business who has the ability to meet its obligations and to continue its operations. So that audit opinion was based on the previous financial year that ended on the 30th of June last year. Now, we're in the 7th month past that date. And for the past almost 7 months, the city has been meeting its obligations and the city has continued its operations. So I think one can dispel that concern, whether the city is a going concern or not. As far as the audit report is concerned, as disappointing as the audit report is, we also welcome it because it shows all the shortcomings that the city needs to address. And what we are doing now, we're working closely with the Auditor General's office. So instead of having an audit done once a year on a particular financial year, we are already starting with an interim audit on the first half of the current financial year. And subsequent to that, we will be doing an audit on every quarter of the financial year, instead of just doing it once on the 12 months. So we're tightening up all our controls. In addition to that, we also will be working with National Treasury that will be seconding 2 former CFOs to the city. So in actual fact, we will then have 3 CFOs managing the financial systems of the city for the next year.
Mayor Randall Williams, thank you for talking to us on Full View tonight. Appreciate your time.